Alright guys, TacticalRab back again today. Hope you're all doing well and enjoying your day so far. And today I wanted to talk about this OpTic's Chicago Dashy situation, right? Because coming into this season, there was the question mark. Dashy's back on the team. Is he going to have the work ethic and the drive that he needs to have that clearly he didn't have on OpTic Gaming Los Angeles last year? That certainly seems to be the case. This past weekend, he was certainly their best player on OpTic's Chicago. And Scump was talking about in the post-match interview up against Paris Legion that Dashy is here to stay for a very long time and he's, well, going to do his best to, well, maintain his starting lineup spot on this team. Question mark then being, when does this team ever make a change, right? If you look at this squad right now, it seems to be set up perfectly for the long term, but if they don't have the success they're looking for this season, what even move can you potentially make with this lineup? Intrigued to hear your thoughts in the comment section below. Like if you guys enjoyed the video, subscribe if you are new, as always, I'd greatly appreciate it. It really helps out the channel. Thank you very much indeed for doing that. First of all, I would mention this from Black Ops leaks, according to Modern Warzone, which are in a since deleted tweet, interestingly enough. Sledgehammer's game will have something to do with the 50s. People are talking about Korean War, but it doesn't seem like it's going to be a futuristic title, right? Doesn't seem like we're getting Advanced Warfare 2, which to me it's expected. They want everything to be integrate possibly with Warzone, and they're probably thinking, okay, like if we have jetpacks in the main game, then having them in Warzone doesn't really make too much sense how we can exactly do that. So makes sense to me. It's going to be boots on the ground once again, but I think a lot of maybe the professional scene were kind of hoping for a return to Advanced Warfare 2 rather than a return to like a World War II-esque Sledgehammer game. But yeah, maybe that is what we're going to get. Of course, nothing confirmed. Take all of this stuff with a grain of salt. So this past weekend, overall KD, Huke 1.39, absolutely out of control. Dashy though, number 2 with a 1.24. Simp had a 1.24 as well, and many other players, many other phenomenal performances from many players this past weekend. But Dashy on the OpTic's Chicago, given they won their one match against Paris Legion, then in their match against Atlanta FaZe, they fell short in that game 5. It was Dashy who was actually putting up the big figures for this team. Envoy didn't have the best weekends. Scump and Formal didn't have the best weekends either. It was Dashy really carrying the load at times for this lineup. He probably had the better share of some of the phenomenal maps that he put up this past weekend. Search and Destroy as well, he had a 1.31. Of course, a lot of these just came over one single map, right? So Methods, for example, it was just 111 in, I think, 7 or whatever performance on Miami Search and Destroy. But Dashy with the 1.31 in Search and Destroy, and in Control, he put up a 1.43, just behind Scraps, who had a very solid weekend in that game mode as well. So Dashy seems to be the best team right now on OpTic's Chicago, at least how he is currently performing, and obviously that's a scary side, certainly, for the opposition. And as breaking points there a few days ago as well, Dashy had a 1.28 KD back in Black Ops 4 when he was on OpTic. Pretty crazy how his career trajectory has gone, going from OpTic Gaming right in Black Ops 4, then to OpTic Gaming Los Angeles again in Modern Warfare, and then now on OpTic's Chicago in Call of Duty Black Ops Cold War, right? And obviously he was much better in Black Ops 4, playing with the team that he liked, and it seems like we've got once again this Black Ops 4 form Dashy in this title, especially on this XM4 meta, which seems to favour him very particularly. But of course, this past weekend, the rest of his team wasn't necessarily up to the standard they would like. I mean, the loss to Atlanta FaZe, obviously Atlanta FaZe, a very solid team. It's tough to do too much about that. In the respawns, they were looking very good indeed. And if the rest of the guys can turn it around in Search and Destroy, as we looked at yesterday, OpTic is still certainly challenging for a number 1 spot. Well, I did think it was interesting just to look at the potential future career trajectories of some of these teams, right? Because you look at the Dallas Empire, you look at Atlanta FaZe, you look at OpTic's Chicago, and you really do have to ask the question, what moves do these teams ever make in theory that make any sense? Outside of the veteran players on their teams retiring, right? And really that does seem to be the only way that these teams ever change into the future. So we'll look at this interview from Scump that I thought was pretty insightful, as Code Gamepedia say OpTic's Chicago win raid control 3-2 and take Paris Legion down at 3-0 in the series, 250 to 102, 6-4, and then 3-2 in the control. And what Scump had to say afterwards was pretty interesting, right? Especially in lines with this, what Hex was talking about several months ago at this point. He was talking about how, Dashy needs to be more disciplined effectively this season. We talked about it on the channel at the time as well, how, he certainly had some tardiness issues, turning up late to practice way back in Black Ops 4. TP wasn't particularly happy, I imagine, with that on the coaching side. Crimsix certainly wasn't happy about it as well. And then you look at a team like OpTic Gaming Los Angeles last season, and we seem to see a similar thing, right? It almost seems like, not like he had a tantrum or whatever, but he didn't seem to be very happy that he was stuck on ILLey, a team that, the fans hated and Hexam wasn't there, and the fans weren't behind anymore, like they were behind him in Call of Duty Black Ops 4. And yeah, he was obviously pretty frustrated, didn't play to the best of his ability, gets dropped off the team, well, not too long into the year, all things considered, and replaced him then in the latter half of the season, and then he had to sub in for that one search and destroy map in the World Championship. He pulled out the sniper and put on an absolute clinic. Back on OpTic's Chicago, Hex was certainly talking about the fact that, look, this guy needs to step up his game, he needs to be here on time, he needs to take this stuff seriously, because welcoming him back is a pretty big deal for us, and yeah, we certainly want to make sure he's here to stay and putting up the level of performance that we know he can perform at, rather than, not necessarily being the most disciplined player in the world. So Hex was basically talking to him and saying, look, you need to be more professional this season, and Scump was saying that, look, he is, he's super committed, that is Dashy, to, being the best player he can possibly be, and doing what he can be doing for OpTic's Chicago. That definitely seems to be the case right now. Bruce is here to stay.
But, with the rumors of last year of Dashy being late, I made it a point to speak to him and his mom at the same time and explain to them the situation, right? Like, this is a franchise league in which, millions and tens of millions of dollars are going in as an investment. So it's a more professional league, and we expect everybody to be professionals. More than ever, Brandon needs to prove himself, not just to the fans or his teammates, but more importantly to me.
What is it like having Dashy as a teammate? What can we expect as fans of OpTic?
Bruce is back on his grind. Bruce has been amazing thus far. I know a lot of people, like you said, were worried about him, especially with his track record last year. But he stayed at my house for 3 weeks. He'd come in and say, "I'm home," and stuff like that. So he also says that he's never leaving. No one's ever getting his spot again. So I think that Bruce is here to stay. And you said facts in the background. Bruce has been awesome thus far. He's obviously super, super talented, and it's been a pleasure teaming with him, as well as in Black Ops 4. So I wouldn't worry about Bruce. I'll keep him in check. He knows that. So I think Bruce is good. No need to worry.
I thought this is funny as well that OpTic tweeted out you winning Sana as well, Hex, in the background when Dashy was playing this past weekend. But a real big question mark to me is, what potential roster changes do these squads even make? So this is the league as it stands right now. Most of these teams, I'd expect them to make a change in maybe not the near future, but in the next couple of seasons. I'm expecting Subliners to maybe make some switches. Minnesota Rokkr, definitely it's possible that one player dips, one player comes in, maybe something switches up. But even then, I think this is probably a long-term idea. Of course, most of these rosters do have a long-term idea in mind, but at the same time, you look at a team like Paris, Seattle Surge, maybe even LA Thieves, but Gorillas, certainly London Royal Ravens and such, they're probably going to be making some changes in the not too distant future in the next couple of seasons. But a squad like Atlanta FaZe, Dallas Empire, OpTic Chicago, what changes do they even make, right? You look at FaZe, they've put together the perfect team for them on paper, all players that have great chemistry together, young up-and-comers as well. Arcitys, who hasn't been around too long even in his career, already a world champion alongside aBeZy and Simp. What upgrades can you really even make on FaZe? It seems to me that this squad is probably not going to be changing for at least a couple of seasons, if not even longer than that. I think the Dallas Empire have a similar thing in mind. The only way Dallas Empire change, really, is if Crimsix decides to retire, or he's just not playing at a high enough level, and they decide to get rid of him. I can't really see a world in which ILLey, Shotzzy, or Huke, given they're a trio and they're obviously very good friends together, they ever find a world where they separate and something goes a different way, especially now in 4v4. Or maybe you see a similar thing over at OpTic Chicago, right? Envoy and Dashy are certainly not going anywhere, right? If you're an OpTic Chicago, basically if you're Hex, who's effectively the general manager of this team, you're looking at squads like FaZe, squads like Empire, and you're thinking, look, I need to maintain these young up-and-comers, right? I can't get rid of Envoy and Dashy. Those are the shining stars of tomorrow and also today. So then you're looking at Scump and Formula and saying, well, how long are these guys still going to compete for? Could well be 3-4 more years. And so, that probably means that this squad is going to change lineup again for another 3 or 4 more years, you could well argue, because of course we had the chaos of the franchise era coming into play before Modern Warfare. We had the chaos of the 5v5 to 4v4 era coming into play at the start of this season. Then a lot of changes happened as a result. But for the coming seasons, I can't necessarily see that happening. So as Dashy says, OpTic Dashy for the 3rd year in a row, run it back. But probably going to be OpTic Dashy for the 4th, 5th, 6th year in a row if he keeps performing at this high level, right? But it's really interesting to me to think about where these teams might potentially go, because certainly I think OpTic are going to bounce back and play well these next couple of weeks. But even if they have a relatively relatively bad season by their standards. Maybe they don't even win a major. I'm just like speculating here. But, you know, could this team even make a change if that was the case, right? Like, probably not. It's difficult to even think about what change you might potentially make, which maybe puts you in a little bit of a tough spot. But if Dashy keeps performing like this, I'm sure they will have an absolutely fine time this season. And Respawn has certainly been very solid indeed. Thought I'd mention this is from round 11 stats. I thought that was pretty interesting graphics he put together here on exactly why they fell short in their search and destroy up against Atlanta FaZe. This is of course sitting here on Moscow. This is the round where, you know, Formal gets completely caught off guard. They go for this kind of A/mid defensive stack. Arcitys and aBeZy just double chow Formal. Formal doesn't even have a chance of getting the kill. They go over towards the B side. Not really too much they can do about that. And then they're playing super separate, the OpTic guys. The fact that Formal dies immediately really doesn't give them too much chance of coming back in the round. Player 3, player 4 getting the bomb down immediately. Cellium watches mid while FaZe plant A, which is a nice little setup for them. And then Envoy tries to flank through mid, gets caught down as well. So really nice setup here from FaZe. But yeah, you can see how separated all the OpTic guys were. And yeah, getting picked off one by one. Not exactly the perfect way to play search and destroy, but I'm sure they will bounce back in due course. Just to finish off with this discussion, I thought was pretty interesting. So Parasite's talking about the sound mantling issue in the game. Certainly something I wish wasn't the case, right? Like back in the day in Black Ops 2, for example, I'm pretty sure if you had dexterity and dead silence, you didn't make much noise, if any, really getting over obstacles and such. Whereas in this game, I can't jump on anything without people hearing me. It's really frustrating. Sliding, I certainly understand makes a noise, but running around also makes a bit of noise, which is kind of annoying. And yeah, mantling especially, they just hear you from miles away. And as Parasite says, like, it is a bailout. Slashes goes, like, sound just needs to be lowered in general. And yeah, it's a bailout for unaware players. And Parasite with a funny reply, you're biased on this subject. I disagree. I think sound cues are important, but you know, not all of them. How am I biased on this subject? That makes no sense. You've always been adamant on making every movement and everything silent is my point. I think there should be a balance of silence and cues. I think mantling, throwing a grenade, things like that should make a slight sound cue. It's not like it should be completely silent necessarily, but yeah, I don't think walking or sprinting should, which I think is also a fair point. Also on LAN, where the gameplay is the best by far, you cannot, you know, even use sounds except in a very few situations. That is very true actually. On LAN, in a proper environment where you've got the crowd in front of you as well, you cannot hear the sound cues to the same degree, which does make the gameplay a lot different, right? You can't necessarily hear people flanking in search and destroy. You can't hear all the things that you would be able to hear if you had your headset absolutely cranked in your home environment with no crowd there, which yeah, does tend to make the game, as Sasha says, play somewhat better. And I suppose therefore arguing as a result, maybe we just get rid of sound in its entirety, and then that would make the game better to play. But I'm intrigued to hear your perspective in the comment section below. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did enjoy it, I'd greatly appreciate a like on the video. It really helps out the YouTube algorithm to know you enjoyed this content. Other people like you may enjoy this content as well, and upgrade the competitive Call of Duty community. Thank you for watching as always, take care, and I will see you next time.